Welcome to This Week in Wrestling History.
All right, everyone, welcome back to Wrestling History Podcast. We're your hosts, Ryan, Jacob.
Yo.
So we normally say we're going to do something different this week, but this week, actually something different. We're going to do a little something that I think we're going to start calling a brief history of. We're just going to look at one match today. It's going to be a shorter episode. Normally we give you like an hour plus. That we really appreciate taking up that much of your week, but
Yeah, we're going to slow it down a little bit. We're
Yeah.
going to not destroy an hour's worth of your time listening to us babble about nothing.
right, we're going to shoot for about 20-25 minutes this week, and we're actually going to do a live watch-along of one specific match. It's going to be Fall Brawl 93, specifically War Games 93.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's not great. The reason we picked this was this is the first appearance of the Shockmaster after his it's the in-ring debut of the Shockmaster.
So after the disastrous fall through the wall and helmet comes off,
Yeah, after his debut at Clash of the Champions before this.
his big trip.
Yes. So between that disaster and this disaster, there's another little micro disaster in between. You can go on YouTube, and it's from an episode of WCW Saturday Night. Tony Schiavone sits down and interviews the Shockmaster, and he looks a little bit different than the last time we saw him.
Yeah, instead of being a bedazzled stormtrooper,
And wearing a big, giant, furry vest robe.
he's now an electrician?
He's a construction worker. He's just wearing a khaki-colored button-down and a white hard hat.
Yeah, and blue jeans. We're
He's the working man.
definitely back to the working man characters.
Right. So it's real bad. And the
Oh,
interview's real bad, too.
And it goes all over the place. Like he goes
Talks
from
about how he likes the kids.
yeah, it goes
Likes
from
comic books.
it goes from talking about cartoons and stuff all the way to him like yelling and screaming at Shivani about falling through the wall.
Right. Yeah. He's like, yeah, I was so ramped up, and I didn't know what to do, so I couldn't find the entrance, so I just busted my way through, and I was falling over, and
And then
it was trying real hard to gloss over and like, let's acknowledge it and let's move past it real quick. That was their game plan.
Yeah.
It didn't work.
and then he proceeds to spill water on Tony Schiavone.
Yeah, so the skit ends with him bumping the table at the diner they're sitting at, spills Tony's water all over him, and that really sets up where the character is going to end up going after War Games. So for War Games itself, he was kind of kept as legitimate as they could after that introduction, but
he was there.
right after this, he would just be like, his gimmick would be bumbling guy.
Yeah. Ugh.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're actually going to start watching War Games, and we're going to talk about it as it goes on. If you want to try to follow along with us, we're starting at 2 hours, 23 minutes, and 2 seconds in to the event, and we are hitting play now. All right, so they're just lowering the cage, and there is a ton of flippin' pyro on this thing.
Yeah, like they have the sparklers shooting off the side of it. There was pyro going off on the stage. And then all of a sudden, right as it hits, there's another big shot of pyro that sends Jesse Ventura and Tony Schiavone essentially to the floor.
Right, like apparently it was really close to them, and they're sitting there coughing from how much smoke there was. The other thing I noticed about this, how long does it take for them to go over the rules to War Games?
Whoever the ring announcer is at the very beginning says, a brief moment to go over the rules.
2 minutes later.
They've now finished the rules.
Right, so the rules are one man from each team will begin the match, and that will be the first period. The first period will consist of 5 minutes. Then there will be a coin toss. After the coin toss, there will be the advantaged team and the disadvantaged team. During the second period, the advantaged team will send in one man from their team, and that period will be period 2, which will last for 2 minutes. Why not just say we're going to start with 2 guys in the ring, one from each team. Then there's going to be a coin toss. The team that wins sends in another guy, and they'll alternate until all the guys are in the ring. Once they're in the ring, then it starts. For some reason, it takes them 3 to 5 minutes to get through this whole spiel of what the rules to War Games are.
Yeah, so we're going to skip that.
Right. We're not worrying about that. So our 2 teams are Team Vader and Team Sting. Team Vader's out first. It's Harlem Heat, Cole, and Kane.
Yeah, they're not Booker T and Stevie Ray yet.
Not yet. And the Masters of the Powerbomb, Sid Vicious and Vader.
Yep. And Sid was coming out with the Colonel, I believe.
Colonel Robert Parker. Robert Parker also was managing Harlem Heat at some point. I don't know if he still was right now. I'm guessing he was.
And Vader came out with Harley Race.
Yep. So, really weird seeing Booker T this far back, knowing where he will go, watching him.
Right.
In
this is super early into his career, I from what I can remember.
Yeah, it's pretty early with their teaming up here. So, they're coming out. Oh, that was the other thing I wanted to mention. The cage looks so shabby.
It's super shabby, but it's also really like the War Games cages have the old War Games cages have roofs on them.
Right.
So it's essentially a Hell in a Cell, but it's close to the ring.
Right.
It like sits on the ring apron like a steel cage match.
Right.
The roof on this thing is maybe 3 inches from Sid Vicious's head.
Yeah, that's always been a problem. There was one War Games where Sid power bombs Brian Pillman, and Pillman hits the roof of the cage on the way up.
See, it's not like when they had the War Games in NXT more recently, where it's just one giant steel cage that goes around the two rings
right,
without a roof on it.
So, right, the ceiling on this thing, not only is it low, it's also sagging.
It's sagging really bad. Like, there's no support coming across the middle of it.
And when they pull away for the wide shots, it also looks like the cage is about 6 inches too narrow. It looks like the side closest to the camera is flared out a little bit. It's like pulling out to get over the ring. It's just
you can see where like the actual posts come out where it's kind of bowed out.
Yeah, it actually hits the ring post in a couple places and then bows out. Exactly. It looks real shabby.
Well, it's funny because at one point, I believe it's the Shockmaster actually throws. It's either Shockmaster or Dustin who throws Booker T over the top rope into the cage, and he can barely fit between the ropes and the cage.
Right. So our good guys come out. They're led by Animal, which is really weird because this was a weird point in time where the Road Warriors weren't tagging together. I don't even know if Hawk was in WCW at all at this point. We have Animal as like the team coach.
Yeah, he's like the mascot.
Yeah. So he comes out with them. Dustin Rhodes had been hurt the night before on WCW Saturday Night. His ribs had been beat up real bad, so he was in bad shape, and they were not really... They didn't want him to go in. They're like, you're hurt. This isn't the right time for you. And he runs and gets in the cage, and the match starts before the good guys can even kind of like realize what happened. They're like, oh no, Dustin's in and he's hurt.
And not only is he hurt, but he's against Vader.
Which... That's actually a little bit of cool storytelling. I appreciate that. He's trying to kind of play like that white meat babyface character.
The gutsy hero.
Right, more guts than brains. Like he's really out with something to prove, which at this point in time, he still kind of was needing to kind of prove himself. He was just starting to get out from underneath his dad's shadow at this point.
I mean, at this point, he's also the U.S. heavyweight champ.
Was he U.S. champ at this point?
Yeah, he came out with the belt.
Yeah. So, yeah, Dustin gets in there. He takes off his boot, and that boot will come into play a lot throughout the course of the evening.
Which is kind of funny because that's a thing that you would think is more of a heel-ish tactic, but super babyface Dustin works because he's going against big man Vader.
Right, and I guess it's more of an old-school Southern thing where, if you... Hey, any weapon in a fight is a legitimate thing type.
Right.
So,
we forgot to mention who's on the good guy team.
Oh, right. So good guy is the Team Sting, is led by Sting, Davey Boy Smith, British Bulldog, Dustin Rhodes, obviously, and then
the natural Dustin Rhodes.
The natural Dustin Rhodes.
And the Shockmaster.
Shocking, the Shockmaster. Yeah, so we all know the famous clip of Shockmaster going ass over tea kettle on a Flair for the Gold on the previous Clash of the Champions. If somehow you've never seen that, just go on YouTube and search for Shockmaster. I'm sure it'll be the first 19 clips that show up.
Yeah, I don't even think you'd have to really search for that.
Right. Possibly the most famous botch in wrestling history.
Yeah, I would say so.
So, pretty standard Vader match where Vader's owning Dustin, just kind of pummeling the ever-loving crap out of him. Every once in a while, the boot comes into play and he'll turn around, but it's really one of those things where they're focusing on how injured Dustin was before this whole thing, and, oh, great, he jumped in first despite everyone's wishes.
Right. And the other thing, too, with it is because this was so early in Dustin's career, you could kind of tell how much better he is going to get because he still was pretty decent through this.
Right. He wasn't bad, but he does become so much better where he's just a lot of brawling right now and a lot of, like, lariats.
Right. However, you have a lot of storytelling in this with the injured ribs, and I mean, even when he tries to go throw like a right hook at Vader, he clinches the ribs after he throws it.
Yeah, a lot of selling of the ribs the whole time.
Which, if you want to do storytelling, fast forward to what was it, Double or Nothing with Cody versus Dustin.
Yep.
Arguably one of the best storytelling matches in recent memory.
Exactly. Yep.
And what do these two things have in common? Dustin Rhodes.
Yep. All right, so we get a Vader bomb off the top, and it looks like we're just about ready for the coin toss to see who's going to be going in next.
Which is absolutely absurd that that's even a thing.
Well, I mean, how else are you going to figure out which team gets the advantage?
Randomly, whoever comes out next. Hey, why have all the guys come out first? Have one guy all do like the Royal Rumble. A clock ticks down, and then air horn goes off, next guy comes running out.
That would be kind of cool. Like,
that's what they did with... Well, no, because they had everybody in for War Games at
NXT.
NXT, yeah.
Everybody started with everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's weird, too. So I really also dislike how they sell... Well, War Games begins with the first period, and then blah, blah, blah. We go through the first 6 or 7 periods, and then the match beyond begins. And
right.
The match... It's so confusing how they plug this whole thing.
They literally bill it as the match beyond throughout most of the early talking.
Right.
But they never explain why it's a match beyond.
Right. Well, it's just so many people, and it's 2 rings, and it's a steel cage. So it's just really convoluted, and they overcomplicate this thing way more than it needed to be. It's already like... And not to mention, this is the 5th or 6th year they've done this. I think it started in 87.
And before this, it was held like every other month. Remember, we went back at one episode and talked about that, where we looked at the history of this briefly.
Right. Yeah.
And they're between like 86, I think you said.
Right, it was 80. I think between 87 and 89, there were like 10 or 12 matches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then once we started getting to TV, like where it's like a syndicated TV show,
yep,
there was only one. And
All
they
right.
saved it for the pay-per-views.
So we just had our coin toss, and shockingly, the heels won.
The bad guys got the coin toss, so now there's another bad guy's coming in to beat up Dustin with Vader.
Oh man, the bad guys get all the luck and always have the advantage. It seems like. What will our heroes ever do?
Ugh.
I'm sure there's at some point a period in War Games history where the good guys win the coin toss, but it ain't often.
It's not often at all. So,
all right, next up is Kane coming in. Not that Kane.
Yeah, not the masked big red machine.
Stevie Ray Kane.
Yes.
Yeah, so Stevie Ray is Kane, Booker T is Cole. Again, I don't honestly remember when they decided to switch their names up and go by their real names, but yeah, they were Kane and Cole right now, Harlem Heat, and yeah, Stevie Ray comes in and basically gets taken out by Dustin right away until Vader has to make the save, which, I mean, that's a thing that I guess happens when your bad guy needs to get saved.
Right. Here's the one thing that I forgot to mention that I was going to ask you about. Vader was WCW champion at this point.
No.
So he was the NWA champion version.
Yes.
They billed him as champion when he came walking out with no belt.
So the match right before this on this pay-per-view was Rick Rude versus Ric Flair for the WCW International thing.
Yes.
We've talked about that convoluted history of the WCW / NWA Championship / WCW International Championship /
NWA mixed with everything
the weird
else.
lineage of the Crockett WCW time period switchover. So the Crockett buyout thing fully happens and transition to WCW the transition kind of occurs between 91 and 93. In 93, I believe we're actually at the very start of Eric Bischoff's reign as executive vice president.
Yeah, I want to say that was when they finally moved him up to... Because when did Nitro start?
Nitro doesn't start till 95.
Okay. So they moved him up to this executive position. He started to kind of figure out what to do with this as best he could.
So from listening to 83 Weeks, Bischoff's big thing was actually kind of figuring out how to get the books right, because WCW had been losing money and NWA had been losing money for years and years. And Turner was fine with that to a point. And that's when we get things like they stopped touring around as much. That's when WCW Saturday Night starts coming out of that one studio in Disney.
Yep.
And it's all just recorded there. And a lot of people felt like it lost a lot of steam there. But
it's at that point it started to become profitable for the first time in
exactly
how many years?
Right, in like a decade.
Oh, so we just got to the point now where the good guys are finally getting their second guy in.
Okay, and we get Sting. We get Sting in already. So Sting comes in, double clothesline to the big guys, and all right, our good guys are going to start rallying a bit here.
Well, what's funny too is that you get Stevie Ray. I'm just going to call him that because I don't remember his name. And Vader, as soon as they start announcing that the good guys are going to get another person in, they immediately run from one side of the ring through the ropes to the
other ring to meet Sting, and we're just like, all right, we're just going to beat the crap out of him the minute he walks in,
But because it took them so long to get through the ropes of the two rings that are side by side, he's already in at that point.
Ready for him, Which I actually like that bit of psychology because that makes sense. Cool, we beat down the one guy, let's go double team the new fresh guy coming in.
And that shows up again later after Sid's in and Bulldog comes in.
Yep. So the other thing I really noticed about this, it's something that watching a lot of, I'll be honest, AEW makes me realize how out of position some guys are. It's like some of the newer indie guys. Sting, he's not like he doesn't have a big move set. A lot of just kind of like standard for this day and age. Hit a bunch of big strikes, couple big
clotheslines,
big body press.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot of technical ability, but he's always in the right place. And everyone in this match, there's not a lot of like getting caught up on each other a ton. It's pretty fluid.
Yeah, they managed to separate themselves just enough so that these guys are doing moves, these guys are doing moves, and then when the time comes, they can intermingle and switch.
Right, and they're not falling over each other. They're not getting tripped up. They're not having to like spend a lot of time repositioning. They're able to just go with where they are and be very fluid from one thing to the next and just transition nicely.
The other thing, too, is that...
not that you'll hear a lot of good things to say about War Games, but here we are.
Right. The other thing, too, though, is that with... most of the time with Sting, he manages to, as a babyface, which I'll go into why this was a thing that I recognized, he manages to get himself in a spot where he's always by the camera, and he's always at a point where all sides of the fans can see him.
Right. He sells to the audience, which is what you're supposed to do as a babyface, honestly.
Well, and I didn't ever think of it like that until I was watching Stone Cold or Straight Up Steve Austin the newest episode where Becky Lynch is on, and Stone Cold talks about when he hits his entrance. When he was a heel, he only went to the two opposite corners. As a babyface, he would hit every single corner so that the fans of the babyface could get pictures of him.
Yeah.
So it's funny to notice that because that's something that Sting was doing. He always managed to be by the camera, but also
he was able to reach out and connect with the whole audience,
everybody in the arena, plus the people that are watching from home.
Right. All right. So we've got Sid in. So now bad guys are back at their advantage, and Dustin is busted wide open.
Yeah, and it's pretty bad. Like at one point, he's bent down trying to pick up the boot, and you can just see it coming out of his head.
Oh yeah, He's always been a bleeder.
Dude can get some color.
He sure can. All right. And Vader and Sid are now just bashing Sting into the roof of the cage.
Which should give you kind of an idea of how low this thing is because they didn't even have to bring Sting all the way up.
Right. And then at one point they just held him up against it, which that's an odd spot. I'm like, if I was being pressed upwards against something, it's not.
I mean, it would have been one thing if they did that and then like took a couple steps. And then took a couple steps.
Like grated him against it.
Yeah.
So, all right, we got 10 seconds until our next guy's coming in. Davey Boy's up next, so they save the Shockmaster for the very last one.
Yep.
Bad guys have Booker T on the outside still.
Oh, and there goes Sid running to the other ring, but he manages to get there just in time.
Yep, he meets Davey Boy, pulls him in, starts brawling with him.
And Davey Boy no-sells like a champ.
Yep. This is a really weird time for Davey Boy. He was only ever in WCW for, I believe, I want to say 9 months, maybe a year. Catches Vader coming off the top, which is a pretty cool spot.
Yeah, Dustin had one of those earlier where he hit that tilt-a-whirl side slam that he does, but he hit it on Vader coming off of the turnbuckle.
I thought that was later on in the match, but...
It was when it was still just the two of them.
Oh, huh. I didn't notice him still doing that match, but... The boot's still in play. Dustin just whacking people with a boot.
His Sting and Dustin are just beating the piss out of Stevie Ray.
Yep. But a British Bulldog is manhandling Sid and Vader. It's all well and good.
Which is one thing that's kind of...
Now Sting and Bulldog are pressing Sid up against the roof of the cage, but they're bouncing him into like the center cross post. So,
which makes a little more sense. But it's funny to watch when they hit him with it, and the entire roof of the cage goes up with him.
Yeah, as opposed to when they were just holding Sting against it, and it was like, we're just going to stand here for a couple seconds and hold him.
Yep.
I guess maybe.
Yeah, it's definitely something when you have guys that are this big in there, and like I said, the cage, the top of the cage, maybe has. It's a little bit bigger than I thought, but with Sid, it's got maybe a foot and a half worth of clearance.
Right, and you're right. It actually is better than back in the day. It used to literally be like right above Sid's head.
Right.
Like I said, I definitely distinctly remember Pillman being power bombed and it being being a stretch to get that to happen.
Well, when they pan out and they show the side of the cage, if let's say Dustin were to get power bombed by Sid, Dustin's head would. He'd be like bent in half up against the cage.
Oh, yeah. And then we have all of our bad guys getting alternately chucked into the cage. We had Sid get chucked and Steve Ray. Sid, for his part, did a lot more in this match than you normally see Sid do.
He moved and sold a lot more than anything that I've seen him do in WWF.
Yeah, I think we're actually about to get a real cool spot by Booker T here in a second. I think he chucks someone into the second. So they're all in one ring right now. I think he chucks someone into the second one and then does a dive over between the two rings. And
obviously, Booker T's the last bad guy to come in.
Yep, so we're at the full advantage for the bad guys right now.
And we only have the Shockmaster left. Maybe the good guys can hold out until the big man comes in to help.
Yeah. Poor Fred Ottman. I feel bad because he seems like a really nice guy, but he was not this level of performer for he was not a main event guy.
No.
And
no matter how much they wanted him to be.
Right. He just came from being in a tag team with Earthquake, and it's just sad. It just was not the right role for him.
No. And talking about spots, or I'm sorry, botches that go down in history. I think the only other one that I would say is close to that is Titus falling underneath the ring.
Ooh, that's up there.
And again, that's another one. Titus is a good guy.
Yeah, exactly. He's a real good guy. It's just
he does a lot with fans and a lot with.
Oh, here we go. We're about to get Booker T's spot. So you got Stevie Ray holding Sting in one ring. He's in the other. Runs, leaps, dives across, and just completely whiffs everyone.
Yep.
So it's cool looking, but not effective.
Athletic, making it from one ring to the other, over both ropes.
Right, which is really weird because you never normally see Booker T doing dives of any sort.
No.
He would he had a finisher for a while where he would do like a flipping leg drop off the top. The Harlem Hangover is his finish.
But that was really it.
Right. He was not an aerialist. And all right, we got the big man in.
He almost stumbles getting into the ring. And he stumbles getting in between the two rings, but he makes it to the second one.
But they make a joke that they counted that. He's like, 1, 2, he made it through 3 ropes and he didn't fall. Yay.
Yeah, because Jesse Ventura is making fun of him.
Oh, Jesse Ventura's been laughing and making fun of it the whole time. So Shockmaster comes in, takes out Harlem Heat, goes right after Vader.
Which is crazy because him standing next to Vader, he's bigger than Vader.
Yeah, I mean, he is a legitimate big guy. It's just... he could have been a main eventer, but it feels like he was always just a little green.
Yeah, and I think they pushed him into the main event spot too quickly.
Yes.
If they gave him time to probably ease into it.
Yeah, time to develop a little bit, time to get over a little bit more.
Nope, here comes the boot again.
The boot to sit again.
And what always makes me laugh with some of the stuff with the boot is that they just let it happen.
Well,
like
there's no
Sid
DQ.
Literally just puts his hand up and goes, "No, don't do it," and then puts his hands down as Dustin clubs him in the face.
Yep. All right. Shockmaster picks up Booker T in a big bear hug. Well, we have Stevie Ray in the background just watching it happen. We have Sid in the background just letting it happen.
Like to the point where...
They're literally both just staring right now at it happening and going, nah, don't think I'll do anything about that.
Yeah, Sid and...
Stevie Ray finally notices and goes to do something about it.
But Davey Boy stops him.
And then they ring the bell and that's it.
Yep.
And the good guys get out of town.
Very, very slowly, mind you. To the point where...
They're getting out of there at a decent speed. But
yeah, but Shockmaster literally just walked by
Stevie
Sid
Ray
and Stevie Ray as they're just standing there.
Yeah, everyone's slightly upset about the outcome on the bad guys team until the good guys get out of Dodge, and then they get real heated about it.
It's like, oh,
we
lost?
Oh, man.
That's awful. And then good guys are gone, and yeah.
I didn't give up. That's BS. We demand satisfaction. Get back out here. Like, y'all weren't that heated a second ago. Did you need a moment to compose yourselves?
Right? They needed a minute to actually think about it. Like, oh shit, we actually just lost. No!
Wait, what? It's over? Huh? Yeah, now Sid's heated. Now the Masters of the Powerbomb are upset.
Which is funny because you have Vader, who's got the wherewithal to be heated the whole time.
Yeah.
And is like yelling at the good guys. Then Sid comes over and is like, oh yeah, we're mad.
Oh, right. Be mad time. All right. So that was our watch along with War Games 93. Hopefully everyone enjoyed it here. Let us know what you think of it.
Yeah, because we might do this more often so we don't get nabbed with running out of space for our provider.
We have upload limits on our server, and it works out 2 ways. So we don't take up everyone's Saturday, and we don't run out of space and have to pay $20 more a month to have an extra episode out.
Just not have episodes for like half of a month.
Right. So, all right, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. We're History.